these are some things that we as grant makers or applicants or grantees could use to narrow down what kinds of methods and questions are right for them in their project. So this was just an example. So what I would like to do, if it's all right, this is the hardest part, and this is like the thing that takes the most experience and training to get, and it's really the thing that I struggle the most with helping people learn to do. But we're going to give it a shot, and hopefully at least an example will give you something to dig your fingernails into when you get back to the office. Let's step through these questions, huh? And this is the complicated part, so I'm going to be more boring and read a little bit. The intended outcome. I just picked one to talk through this example. As you guys said, there are multiple potential stakeholders who could experience benefit from a project like this one, but I'm just going with learning and with an audience, a primary intended audience of the K-12 educators. Right, I just picked one, and that seemed like they're in it to benefit from learning some new skills and stuff related to that. So skills and knowledge, information that they can incorporate into their work with students. So a sort of secondary beneficiary in the teachers' classrooms, right? They might ultimately benefit, but if you wanted to really be a picky evaluator, the direct beneficiary of this program is not the school districts or the communities or the students, but it's the teachers. They are the program participants here, right? And so what do they learn? Well, the description tells us that these teachers are coming from places where there's a lot of new art stuff going on, right? STEM to STEAM and arts integration, and teachers who might not have an arts background, but who are going to be expected to do arts and creative stuff in their classrooms. So they might have a knowledge gap around the arts. They might have a confidence gap, right? Oh, I don't have a creative bone in my body. I can't sing. I don't know how to get my kids to move in a creative way. This is disruptive of my curriculum I've used for 27 years, right? All of that stuff. That speaks to like insecurity grounded in lack of knowledge, right? So there's confidence to be learned. And maybe an attitude around the value of the arts in a non-arts classroom, right? Mm-hmm. So those are all things that these educators could be getting from their time with our friends at Farnsworth and Frostbite Falls. And then the indicator stuff, this is where I like to get away from the word measure and into a word more like observe, right? If you can register it with your senses, and if someone else might be able to register it in approximately the same way with their senses, all things being equal, right? I'm just going to read. This is the hard part. Thinking of indicators works just like you might imagine with outcomes that have tangible products or social components where you can like see someone's behavior. Indicators are usually really easy to observe. A principal might sit in on a classroom of a teacher who's in this program and notice change over time in how effectively they're using arts content or how confident they seem in engaging with new material. That's a thing that can be observed. You can develop structured criteria against which you can observe that to see a change. For things that mostly are internal to oneself, so maybe changing attitudes toward the arts is a pretty internal thing. A stranger walking by wouldn't notice that about a person necessarily. Those might be a little more indirect, or they might involve a self-report, right? Maybe these educators are asked to keep a journal over the course of their weeks in the program in which they respond to the same prompts every week about, what did you do, where did you learn, how confident do you feel about this, right? To get an idea of, are their perceptions, are their abilities, are their whatever changing over time? Which is actually the example I was going to use in talking about the individual artist wanting to see about their growth within a project, is that Someone could do a self-reflective journaling exercise like that, as long as they're consistent, and hopefully see the same kinds of things. Yeah. So those are some, even though they might not seem measurable, like these are some things that we can at least document in a systematic way, right? That's another one of my favorite words related to evaluation is systematic. It's not a thing I saw one time, right? Or the heard a guy method. Do you guys know the heard a guy method? So I heard a guy one time who said this thing, and I believe him because he looked really trustworthy. I'm glad that joke landed. Thank you. And so how about the other questions on that red sheet? I forget which of you on the back table there was like, I don't see how these fit together. So I'm going to try and sell it. Because the thing about evaluation methods is that some are better suited to certain kinds of questions or indicators than others. And some are better suited to different kinds of contact or intervention structures than others. So, who is being served and when do we get to see them? We know that they're teachers, so they have day jobs where we can find them. They have bosses we can talk to. They have a schedule that's relatively predictable. They're in a pretty prescribed geographic area, right? They're around the Frostbite Falls greater metropolitan area. And they're in particular kinds of schools. So we know something about the context of what's going on in their professional life that might affect their availability for a lot of contact in evaluation, and it might affect the way they respond to certain questions. Like maybe they're totally stressed out with all these changes, and that might mitigate the benefit of the program. That helps us in selecting methods because if this were a one-day workshop, we couldn't necessarily track a lot of change over time because we might lose track of those teachers, 6 months down the line. Because it's a longer-term project, it makes it easier to take observations at different time points and really see if there's a trend as the program progresses. And because it's related to the school year, and that I think I wrote in, I made this up as if that weren't obvious, the summer intensive and then continuing through the school year. So you might have some access to people before the program even starts. That means you might be able to get a pre-test kind of baseline information about things like their knowledge or their attitudes. And because we know these other things about where they are physically in the world, you might be able to do a more delayed post-test to see how much stuff actually stuck, depending, of course, on how long the grant period is, which is a whole different monkey wrench. These things, they tell us about the context the participants are operating in, and they tell us about how much access we could expect or hope to have in order to get data from these people. So that's why these things matter to methods. They don't really matter when talking about outcomes or about program design, but they come into play when we're thinking about getting data from people. Does that help, whoever said that? Some other stuff that may affect the selection of your methods. The experience or skills of your data collectors. If you use a method that requires a human to help you collect the data, that could complicate things. There's a learning curve to doing that kind of thing. If you have an interest in limiting the intrusiveness of data collection. So it might not be wise if you're doing data collection in one of the educator workshops to have somebody with a clipboard standing over the educator taking notes and observing while they're actually doing the thing, because this is super creepy and weird, right? So that would be too intrusive. But maybe somebody sitting in the corner taking notes at a structured observation of who's doing what for how long might give you, that might be appropriately intrusive in the workshop setting. A data collection tool, an instrument, that might be a survey or a rubric or any other thing. Whether that thing is already developed, someone else has done the hard work of coming up with the questions and the structure already, or if you have to design it from scratch, that can affect your method selection, right? If you go on the internet and you put into the Google evaluating the confidence of educators in an arts integration PD program, and you get a really great survey or an observation tool, and you can print it off, or maybe just change a couple of words, then boom, done. That's a great method. Use that one, right? If it addresses the questions that you care about. But maybe like a really structured observation that you would have to design from scratch is not the right tool, because maybe Farnsworth doesn't have the capacity or time to do that.
One of my questions was when it's a short-term project and they don't have a lot of funds to have somebody observe or collect or do those types of things.
Yeah.
So any ideas for evaluation tools that would be easier in those types of circumstances would be great.
Yes, that was my next one. Very nice. Excellent work.
She didn't pay me, I swear she didn't.
No,
Renee and I have only talked on the phone, we've never met in person.
Yeah. So what does all this stuff mean? Here's where it boils down to for our friends at Farnsworth, right? There are options. There isn't one right method for a program like this one. And it depends on all that other stuff, right? It might be asking the teachers to do a 10-minute reflection after every workshop or between workshops is the way to do it. That is free except for the little bit of time it takes to come up with the questions you want to ask them, right? And printing costs, I suppose. Having someone come and do classroom observations. It might be that these educators are already being observed. Maybe you can work with their principals or administrators to add 2 questions specifically related to this program into their observation form. It might be that getting peer review or feedback from other educators in their schools, or from their bosses if their bosses have time, or from each other within the program, might get you at those kinds of questions. Applying a rubric to any of that stuff, like if there's a skill progression that you're interested in as the person running the program, that might be a good way to get at it. Going back a year later and seeing how many educators are using things they learned or got directly from the program, a rate of adoption or use of materials or strategies, or having people do a portfolio, which again they might already be doing as a program activity. That's actually a big sort of catch-all umbrella answer to your question, Holly, that it is possible to integrate these kinds of evaluative tools into the structure of a program and have it be not only a thing that adds value for the participants, but also gets you some information. It becomes almost like a program statistic and not a thing tacked on top of what we're already doing. So.
Right. We've got to be able to sell it to them and show them the value of doing these things for themselves as an organization, and that it's not just us reporting back to the State Arts Board. But in the end, we're asking for that information to report back to the State Arts Board. So,
yes.
I mean, we can't really disguise that fact either.
It's reporting back to the public.
The public, to the public. But yes, that's true. But still, we're making them report it to us, so it's hard to get them to not make it an add-on. I mean, we have to get way far ahead of it and get this into our grants writing workshops and make sure that they have this idea in their head, hopefully, before they ever look at our application.
Yeah.
Because to them, coming to this, it's an application that they're filling out. And if they haven't already got it in their head that they're going to have some sort of rich evaluation tool, it's going to be an add-on because it's something we ask. Yeah,
I'm with you. I don't have the easy answer. The most true answer is, I forget if Ashley or Heather said it when I was standing over here, but the notion of shifting attitudes sort of across the board, of like this is a thing that's really for you. And maybe this is another thing I can share with you, is that one of the first things I did when I started my job is sort of draft up for myself some guiding principles around evaluation. And I think the first one I wrote down is that evaluation should exist for the benefit of the organization or person doing it, for the grantee or project doers, and that only secondarily is they're a part of that they are obligated to report to their grant maker, so that it's really driven by value and utility to the person doing it.
Well, I think the one benefit you have at this point is that we are now 6.5 years into the process, and they've been asked to do evaluation for the last 6.5 years, so you're not really introducing something new that we haven't been asking them to do. And I know with some of the grant training that we've already started using, we've said, build the evaluation in at the beginning, don't do it as an add-on. So it's not like we're giving them something new that they haven't been already experiencing. We could actually put a positive spin on it and say, now that we've been doing this for a while, we have some really good ideas that will help you in terms of making a better evaluation all around, rather than, we got another evaluation program for you to do. And like Vicki said, in terms of the introduction, kind of building it into why it helps them and the public in general, and the investment in the legacy, so that maybe the funding will continue at the end of the 25-year cycle and so forth. So.
But also, I think, to the point that you were making earlier, it's not just individual artists. I think everybody does reflection, for sure. And if there's, and I would even say observation. I mean, that's already happening, like with every project. So if there's a, kind of optimizing those, or the feedback too, for that matter. I mean, maybe less with individual artists on that one, but,
I think a challenge also is that once you get them going, they can see a lot of different things they would want to evaluate about what they're doing. Like our group, for instance, went sort of a whole different way just based on my take on this scenario, that it could be a goal of this group to build a relationship and partnership long-term with schools. Like that might be their primary purpose versus knowledge.
I know one of the things that I think has happened in, at least I'll speak to our area, and the confusion I think that lies around this issue is, the adoption of these SMART goals that got integrated into at least our application.
It did ours too.
And then how that's interpreted, and then again, measurable being considered, you've got to be able to count it. So then suddenly everything becomes about numbers. As opposed to what you're talking about in terms of reflection and observation and those kinds of things, and validating that. And one of the things that you said that really made so much sense to me was really that sort of developing this heightened consciousness of what they already assume and what they are already doing, but allowing that to come out in a way that they can actually say, this is what we discovered.
Like, any educators in the house by training? Yeah, a little bit. So I'm thinking about reflection and measurement and stuff, and it makes me think of the Kolb cycle, which I always forget the pieces of, but it's like you do some thinking and planning, and then you do the thing, and then you reflect about the thing, and then you articulate what you've learned from the thing, and then you can go on and do another thing, and then you can, right? And that tool might be a thing that resonates with people to kind of bridge SMART goals and measurement and terrifying evaluation jargon with what we're already doing and the way we already operate. So thank you for crossing those wires for me in that way.
I think one thing we haven't talked about yet is that it's one thing, I think it will be very easy to spin it positively to our applicants and potential applicants. I think that will be easy because, like we said, we've done this for a number of years. So if we give them examples and tools and things to choose from and those kind of things, I think they will be like, oh, finally, yes, this is now easy. Changing the perception of our panels and boards is a whole different thing.
Yes.
That is a whole separate workshop. It's not really evaluations, and they'll be like, well, that's not what we've always done.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
gonna be very fearful
And
for
we
We're-
them.
need to change our rubrics.
So
and-
training
yeah.
them
Yep.
Yeah.
is
I,
going to be a whole different.
I,
This doesn't exclude
can
counting
attest
though, too. I mean, you can still be doing some counting, but you
Yeah.
take
Yeah.
it to the next level
The
of, you know, the
criteria
value
for
beyond
which
just,
they-
oh, it sounds like it'd be fun to do. Because that's what I get.
Right.
Oh, I want to do this project because it would be fun.
Yeah.
I go, so what's the value?
yeah.
You know,
Well, and
why?
I
Why?
really
You know?
like the idea of brainstorming together. We're here as a group right now. Some great ways to evaluate art projects that we could put in a drop down. I mean, that would be such a time saver that it would be an easy sell to the constituents, but also with the online grants, I think that, you know, if you had that question there for the evaluators, the reviewers to see what the choices are, that's gonna help inform them in their review as well.
Yeah.
Holly, I swear I didn't pay her. That's a great segue. Again,